I mean, you'd think the answer is pretty clear, but there's obviously a whole lot of contention. What's up, guys? Hunter, and here we are to do a breakdown and discussion to determine whether or not Jogo Satoru. Jogo Satoru. Imagine if Jogo had the 6th eye. He just had. He had the eye. There's an image of. I've seen the image of that. Nah, but if we're. I lost my train of thought immediately. If Jogo, the disaster curse of the flames and volcanoes, if he actually remotely scales to the strongest of the strongest. Obviously, if you've been in the community for a while, you've heard the discussions, you've been there, and Jogo is inarguably one of the most contentious characters in the entire scaling side of Jujutsu Kaisen. Character-wise, he's pretty fine. No one really cares about Jogo. I think about it. But we have a little chunk of stuff to talk about. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. What's up, guys? Hunter here. Fun fact, I have it on me. And I keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact. Jogo, I want to say he's a nightmare to scale, but he isn't really. Like, if you really were to just take everything he does at face value, he literally perfectly fits within the tier of the grade tiering system of Jujutsu Kaisen. Note how every single sorcerer typically scales above their respective curse grade equivalent. So you have a grade 4 curse being lower than a grade 4 sorcerer, and a grade 3 curse being lower than a grade 3 sorcerer, and so on and so forth, all the way up until you reach special grade. And with that being the case, Jogo is very appropriately scaled. And pretty much, I think it's kind of impossible to argue any grade 1 actually beats Jogo. Anyone specifically classified as a grade 1. Obviously, we see a whole bunch of grade 1s go up against a confirmed weaker disaster curse. According to Nanami, Naobito, and Maki, Jogo simply Chad walking up after Toji left. They were like, this curse, it's on an entirely different level than that previous one. What is going on? So obviously, Jogo should scale above Dagon. Dagon's a special grade curse. Dagon took presumably the strongest grade 1 that we've seen outside of like maybe Mei and Naoya, and bullied him. Just bullied him. And though that was mainly because of Domain. Domain Dagon is what was really putting the paws all over Naobito. And ultimately, Jogo should definitely scale above the entire grade 1 tier. I love Yuji Itadori pre his liberation. Post-liberated Yuji, that's a weird thing. I'll make my own video talking about that. But pre-liberation Yuji, another grade 1 tier fighter. I'm sorry, I just don't see him beating Jogo. I see him getting toasted alive. Aototo, he could make it clap, but he's gonna get flooded with lava. And even if that don't happen, he's gonna get caught in a domain. And even if he symbol domains, it ain't gonna work out too well for Broski when Jogo decides to hit him with that sure hit maximum meteor and just slams through the simple domain. So ultimately, I don't see Toto doing it to him. And realistically, what other grade 1s are there? Mei? I mean, Bird Strike is nice. It's nice, it's smooth, but it's not getting hit by it. Jogo's not going to get hit by Bird Strike. If Mei even breathes too hard, she's getting lit on fire. Unless you suddenly think Mei is like Naobito levels of speed because she's trained her body to the peak of a grade 1 sorcerer and has perfectly optimized her technique with Bird Strike. She's literally not able to perceive Jogo. Jogo literally runs up, one taps her. Like a lot of people want to multi-tap Mei. So ultimately, I don't see any grade 1 doing anything to Jogo. And by proxy, anyone who scales below a grade 1, not doing nothing. But the biggest issue that Jogo runs into is his lack of definitive dubs outside of the grade 1s. Because very specifically, the only fights, and I say this 100% genuinely, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, the only fights that we ever see Jogo win are against random humans when he was lighting them on fire, if you want to count those as fights, when he was in the cafe and he lit everybody up in there, if you want to count those as fights, and one-armed Naobito, not one arm, but one-eyed Nanami, who was a little munched up, and a fatigued Maki, who probably had a broken bone or two. That's it. This is the only fight he wins. That's the only real fight against fatigue grade 1s. And don't get me wrong, once again, as I just said, I think Jogo clears the entire grade 1 tier. I don't think it's close. But that leaves him with only 2 other battles And it's where the rest of the chaos of Jogo scaling comes in. Gojo and Sukuna, 15-finger Sukuna, and, well, Gojo, pre-prison realm. Those are the only other fights Jogo has. And the question is, does he scale? Does he tickle their toes, essentially, at all? In any of his stats, whether it be speed, whether it be durability, whether it be AP, anything. Does he scale remotely to any of them in terms of his raw stats? If he does, then he gets a nice juicy boost, not only inverse, but also cross-verse. If you are able to prove that he could damage Satoru Gojo, or damage Ryomen Sukuna at 15 fingers, then bro gets boosted massively. Them flame attacks, he could run wild in a couple verses. He ain't getting too far into Similarly Sins, or Black Clover, or Magi, or a lot of other verses. Bro isn't even getting past Dragon Ball. But, like, still, it's a nice little beefy buff, especially if you start to scale him up above certain things and above certain characters. It's nice enough, but that's the difficult thing. At least in my opinion, he doesn't actually scale to them. And the reason I say this is because the easier one. Let's go with the easier one, because the harder one is admittedly at the start. The hardest one is Jogo's first major battle in the entire series when he goes up against Gojo Satoru. So let's tackle the easier one. 15-finger Sukuna gives Jogo one request, one stipulation to fulfill the merits of their deal. He looks at Jogo and says, "Hey, how you doing? I'll give you one task. I will work under you curses if you are able to land one singular hit on me. That's it. Just one hit. Go ahead. Do your worst." And we literally see Jogo do his worst. Like, he pulls out everything. Especially if you go by the anime's variation of the fight. Jogo pulls out moves he didn't even have in the manga. He's slamming buildings together, flooding the entire area with lava. He's dropping maximum meteors. He's throwing anything and everything he can, and none of it's landing. None of it. None of it at all. Once again, you could at best scale Jogo to around Naobito levels of speed. But not to 15-finger Sukuna. Just not at all. Because he literally does not land a hit. Sukuna is casually juking him, grabbing him, throwing him, slamming him through buildings, abusing the little mountain man. And thusly, it's pretty hard to argue he scales remotely in speed to Sukuna, because to scale in speed, you have to at least be able to tag him. At least hit him just once. That's the thing. You argue Ryu and Yuta are relative because you see them exchange fisticuffs. They're able to go word for word, bar for bar, land a couple punches on each other. You argue Rika and Ryu are relative because they're able to, go a little fisticuffs. You argue Maki / Toji is relative to a 15-finger with suppressed curse energy output for his curse technique, but physical movements being fine, because once again you see that exchange. Maki lands a hit, Sukuna lands a hit. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You can't argue that for Jogo, because there is no back and forth. It's only fourth. There is only fourth, and Jogo getting dragged back further down the scaling ladder, because he cannot land a singular hit. Not a one. The whole stipulation. That's the biggest thing. The hardest thing to argue for Jogo is that he scales in speed to 15-finger because he literally can't land one hit. Especially considering the scale of his attacks, it's embarrassing. Especially remember when he was trapped inside a building with Sukuna and he made the entire building explode and Sukuna still casually just dodged it. There's no way you can scale speed. Durability-wise, it's also impossible. Because once again, he doesn't land a hit. Like, typically, when we go with scaling, unless otherwise stated, unless a character is implied to be a glass cannon, or they can't survive their own attacks or anything like that, typically we go by, I believe, what is the law? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Is that Newton's? No. Is it? As you can tell, your boy was not a physics major, but Newton's third law. I do declare. His third law it is Newton's third law. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, except for when we both start His third law states that for every action, force in nature, there is an equal and opposite reaction. AKA, what we typically argue in scaling is that your AP is relative to your durability. Because for you to punch somebody and not shatter your fist when you break their fist, you need to be able to scale to your own attack potency. Your body needs to be able to handle the force you're dealing out, because every bit of force you exert is simultaneously being exerted back on you. But since he does not land a hit on Sukuna, and because Sukuna's attacks very consistently brutalize Jogo, whether it be him being slammed through buildings, getting cleaved, getting dismantled, anything like that, it's impossible to argue that Jogo scales durability-wise to 15-finger Sukuna. He may have similar regeneration, maybe he has similar regeneration because of his cursed spirit type nature, and he's able to regrow limbs and stuff like that. But in terms of raw durability, pretty much impossible to argue. You can't even Newton's third law. Unless, now this is interesting, unless you go with one thing that may get Jogo to scale there, and it's maximum meteor. Now, here's the thing. This is one of the biggest contentions that Jogo consistently has. If you're a Jogo glazer, you know the statement. Even that had to do damage to Sukuna. And Sukuna hits us with the famous 3 words, if it hit. And that's the thing. If you take Sukuna's statement at face value, that maximum meteor would have done damage to him at all. Any damage. Like literally, damage could be that. That's damage. You can't even see it, but that's damage. A little thing, if you argue that maximum meteor is able to do any damage to 15 finger, then you can argue that Jogo's top AP, which is his maximum meteor and by proxy his domain, the superior to maximum techniques, then you could argue that Jogo scales super duper uber super low and relative to 15-finger Sukuna. The only thing that's so vague about it is that Sukuna himself just finishes a statement that Jogo made and very continuously mocks him for being weak throughout their battle. Consistently asks if that's all he's got. Consistently is, no, I don't want to say bored or disappointed because he very much admits that, hey, you've entertained me a little bit. That's nice enough. But it's super hard to argue he scales, even to that. And once again, the maximum meteor seems to take a lot of Jogo's energy, so it's hard to argue that he scales, but he makes it. So I'll be generous. Being as generous to Jogo as humanly possible, or as cursely possible, he scales very, very, very bottom tier, low and relative with his maximum AP, thanks to maximum meteor being able to do damage to 15-finger Sukuna if it hit. What does this mean? It means if maximum meteor is able to hit anybody, it will most likely do damage inverse. Because 15-finger Sukuna should arguably, I'd say he may be less bulky than 20-finger, but I think due to what he is, he probably is the second bulkiest character in the entire series, only second to himself. Most likely bulkier than Yuta Okkotsu, most likely bulkier than Ryui Shigori, most likely even bulkier than Satoru Gojo. In terms of just raw bulk, the durability of Sukuna should be insane at 15-finger, at least in my opinion. So Jogo being able to do anything to that means that if Jogo's able to smack anybody with maximum meteor, a hard feat, if Panda was able to dodge her maximum technique, if that nasty, disgusting waste of space, that filth, that black and white beast was able to dodge maximum meteor, you aren't hitting nobody with it. But if you land a hit, and if Jogo uses domain and activates maximum meteor as a sure hit, then it will do damage, which is very, very good. That's very, very good. Without that, it's hard to argue Jogo could even damage any of the special grades, because, well, he doesn't have any special grade scaling. But if you go with the maximum meteor being able to harm Sukuna at all, even if it's just a minor nick on his skin, then you gotta put credit on it. You gotta give Jogo a little bit of that like that. And the same kind of pattern falls when you go back to his original fight and the main fight that put Jogo on the map when he fought Gojo. Once again, you run into the same issue with Jogo that you run into Jogo versus Sukuna. Jogo doesn't actually ever land a singular hit on Satoru throughout the entire series. He does not. He has not a single hit. You can go reread the entire thing. He manages to tag Gojo's infinity. He only touches Gojo once in their first fight and again in their rematch, when Jogo very specifically realized that, oh, he's turned his technique off. And that's when they're able to interlink and get all nice and personal and all smooth and buttery with it. But outside of that, Jogo doesn't land a single hit. So once again, speed-wise, it's pretty much impossible to argue that he scales, because Jogo's very clearly being toyed with by Gojo, since he has no reason to dodge any of Jogo's attacks, because they're never going to reach him. And same thing with durability. Since we never see him actually hit Gojo, it's hard to argue that his durability scales anywhere near Gojo's. It just is. It's a sad fate for the Disaster Curse of the Flames in the Volcano, where ultimately he just doesn't have anything that suggests he could do it. Not a single thing, because he never lands the hit. But once again, we go back to this AP, and if you think AP equals durability, then maybe Jogo does have the durability. It's stated loosely. He asked Gojo, hey, do you think, now that we're in my more potent domain, my techniques, now that they'll have more potency, will they be able to reach you? And Gojo's like, yeah. You run into the same thing. Because notably, this one's a bit more vague. It's even more vague than the Sukuna statement. Where Gojo says, yeah, sure, they'll reach me. But like, for an example, this blade can reach me. The blade has reached me. If you can't see, it's in contact with me. I'm actually pressing down relatively hard right now. It's hard to tell, but I'm pressing down relatively hard. The attack has reached me, but it isn't piercing my skin. It's not breaking up. Well, there you go. There's a little, let's see, can you see it? I'm not sure if you can even see it on camera. There's a little indent in my arm. The attack reached me. Does that prove the attack would do damage? I don't think so. I don't. But once again, if you're being as generous to Jogo as possible, and you combine this with the Sukuna statement, and you combine that with the idea that domain expansions are the ultimate, they are the alpha technique of all techniques, they are the most superior, then you can make the argument that, well, legally speaking, if that is the case, if the attacks would have reached Gojo, and Sukuna believes that Maximum Meteor, an inferior technique to domain expansions, would have done damage, whatever that means in this context, would hit, then Jogo could arguably scale to Jogo, I'm sorry, their names always mess me up. Jogo could scale to Gojo with his AP, because he would be able to do damage if his attacks hit. That's the thing, though. Speed, can't. Durability, hard to argue because he never lands the hit. So there's no equal and opposite reaction thing for Newton's third law. So it's hard. But that's the thing. If you're as generous as possible and you start stacking statements and putting certain ideas together, Jogo should theoretically be able to do damage to anyone in the verse. Anyone in the whole verse. Because if he's able to damage 15-finger Sukuna, well, maybe not 20-finger. Maybe he wouldn't be able to do any damage to 20-finger Sukuna. But if you argue that his most powerful techniques could do damage to the strongest in both Gojo and Sukuna, then everyone else who falls beneath the tier, like literally, if I were to make a tier list, you would have 20-finger Sukuna at the top, full completed space slash and everything, Gojo right behind him, 15-finger a tier below those two, and then the like 3 whole tiers, maybe 4 or 5 whole tiers, then the rest of the verse. If Jogo's able to harm the person in that second to top tier, and even Gojo, then he's able to damage anybody. The only issue is his speed and his durability is a little bit rough in terms of how he would scale. But once again, this is being the most generous. This is me laying all my bias cards on the table. This is me glazing Jogo as much as I humanly can within reason. If you just think Sukuna was mocking him, which you could very make the argument, like, I would have won, yeah, if you could hit me. Like, considering you could make the easy argument that Sukuna was simply playing along and continuing his ever-present mocking of Jogo in that moment, and Maximum Meteor wouldn't actually do any damage, because he's literally sitting on it, would do no damage to him at all, then that goes out the window. He doesn't scale at all to AP, durability, or speed. And then you just take Jogo's statement, or not Jogo, you take Gojo's statement about, yeah, your attacks will be able to reach me, as a similar thing to the sword analogy that I showed you, where the attacks can reach, but they can do no damage, then he doesn't scale them at all. He doesn't scale to them at all, and the best you can scale him is nebulously above grade 1s and above other special grades like Dagon. So, like, you can still get, like, island level. You get cross version, still get, like, island level. He scales above Dagon to make an island in his domain and stuff like that. But outside of that, it's hard. It's impossible to scale him to any of the special grades. Whether it be, I mean, ironically enough, you can make the argument nowhere near Suguru Geto. Geto? Why did I say Geto? Suguru Geto. Nowhere near Yuki Tsukuma. Nowhere near Yutokotsu. Definitely nowhere near Satoru Gojo. And definitely nowhere near Kenjaku. There's just no way to scale him to that or argue that he'd be able to damage them, because once again, if you remove those statements, remove the charitable interpretations, he has nothing to suggest even his maximum meteor would do anything but bounce off of them because of how much higher their durability is relative to other special grade curses. No way to argue it. And especially since characters like Yuki Tsukumo have what? Like planetary level potency if they take their techniques to the max, and Yuta should be bulkier than her. And well, to be fair, that's like definitely going down a rabbit hole of separate stuff. But essentially, Jogo would peak out above grade 1 sorcerer, which is good. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. But still, a solid 80% of the verse that he scales above and is able to do extreme lethal damage to. But then once again, you run into the same issue where he's not even top 15. A lot of the culling games, except for the 2 weaker colonies, like Curse Naoya would manhandle him because he wouldn't be able to do damage to Curse Naoya because Curse Naoya scales well, once again, he has the feat of tagging a post-ending clan Maki, who should have much higher durability than any other grade 1, so Jogo's attacks would be able to do damage. You run into the same thing with Ryu, with Uro, with Kurushi, with all these other beings. They all just wash him if you take away that AP statement and you interpret it a slightly different way that is not favorable to Jogo. So Jogo's in a rough spot. Unfortunately, I personally, if you want my honest opinion, I've been playing a certain kind of advocate for the one-eyed cursed beast. I don't think he scales to the strongest at all in any stats, and I don't even really think he could damage him, even if his attacks landed. That's me being real. But if you want to be generous, if you want to go Jogo Goonin, you want to go Jogo crazy, then you can make the argument he scales super duper low in relative because he could do damage if his attacks hit. If maximum meteor and above, so essentially maximum meteor in his domain, hit. However, that is what I think. Please tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave the strongest volcano in the comment section down below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below. You support for as low as $1 a month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reaction to the next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, I want to thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Bag of the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Wakana Plays and Red Wolf 4765. I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons, Winter, Victor, Sean, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, and Demix LND. I'd like to give another thank you to our $7 member, Autumn's Morning Lazo. I'd like to give another scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Joaquin, and Idemokami. I'd like to give another thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. I'd like to give one final thank you to our $25 patrons, Igneo and Calvin Elder.